do it. So if we think about education, the theme of today's event, and what it means to have a great education, here's what we mostly imagine. A bunch of kids, just like us, in a classroom, going through the grading system, going off to a good university, which would eventually lead to a nice job. And that's what the standard journey of success looks like. That's the path that most of us have been on, because it's one that's felt safe. It's one that's felt reinforced. It's been the tradition of our family, parents, and relatives. But if we think about education in the much broader sense of being able to learn important lessons, I would argue that most of these actually don't occur in a classroom. And I'd say the reason for this is because of the dissonance that exists between systems like school and the world outside school. In school, it focuses a lot on lessons that stack on top of each other in math, science, geography, history. And then those lessons eventually lead to a test, an exam, a quiz, or an assignment. But in the real world beyond school, it often works in the other way. You often start by getting tested, by facing challenges, by trying to find solutions to problems that don't yet exist. And it's through those tests that you have a choice. You have a choice to take the lessons from those experiences, to make sure that you don't make those same mistakes again. But this is not another talk about how to improve our school system, but rather a message that the biggest opportunities for growth actually come outside of it. And in my life, those greatest opportunities actually came at a time where I literally, physically couldn't even attend school. It was the summer of 2019, and I had just finished my year as a grade 10 student. I had the highest grade average I had ever received. I was on a bunch of sports teams, I was volunteering, I had a part-time job, and I felt like everything was going right for me. I was right on this path that I needed to be, or that was expected of me. And it was that summer where my family had taken a trip to Chicago, the Windy City, and we had the absolute best time. We went to a bunch of tourist attractions like Famous Bean. We went to Chicago Cubs game, big baseball fan here. We got a bunch of bus tours of the city, went to different museums, tried the extremely overrated deep dish pizza. I'll leave that as my hot take. But it was on the way back from this trip that we ended up staying with some family in Toronto, which was on our way back to our home in Ottawa. And as you can assume, a lot of people come to visit you, 5 people in my family. You might not have all the comfy beds available for everyone. So a few of us grabbed air mattresses, slept on the floor, and I ended up calling dibs on a couch. Didn't think about it too much. I'd slept on couches before, maybe not the most comfortable experience, but usually gets the job done. But this night was different, because the next morning, I didn't wake up to an alarm. I didn't wake up to the sounds of pots and pans clinging together. I didn't even wake up to the sound of my family members and relatives chatting amongst each other. But what I woke up to was intense pain that had shot right through my lower back region. Pain that was so severe, unlike anything I had ever experienced before. Pain that caused me to be hunched over for the entire day, even just to get up, walk around, and use the bathroom. Pain that caused us to cut our trip short to make sure that we could get back home to Ottawa and I could get the care that I needed. It was pain that lasted days and days, getting more severe by the day, and eventually we felt it was the best decision for me to go to the hospital. And when I got there, they did their standard blood work, checks, scans, x-rays, MRIs, and all that. And what did they find? Nothing. They had no clue what was going on. There were no conclusions that came from any of their tests. And to be honest, I'm no medical professional, but I knew that this wasn't something that was just going to go away as quickly as it came. Because it was so severe, because it was so intense, it didn't feel like something that might fade away like maybe a cold would after a couple days. And as they went through their checklist of items to test me on, one of the last things left was a bone marrow test for leukemia. Now, they had let me know since the beginning that this would be something that would be an extremely rare chance of occurring, especially with the symptoms that I presented with. So, again, I didn't really think too much. I had hoped that with all the painkillers they'd given me, with how I was feeling, that I'd just get through this test and then move on with my life as a high school student. But the day after the test, in my hospital room, I heard a knock on the door. It was the main doctor that had been talking to me about this test. Then someone else came in the room, an oncologist. Then someone else came in the room, a social worker. And then before I knew it, we had about 6 or 7 people in the room in total. Safe to say, it caused both my mom and I to sit up in our chairs in the room. And as they sat around the bed, they said those 3 magic words that really changed my life. Milind, it's cancer. And it was in that moment where I didn't know what to think. In fact, I couldn't think. Me? Cancer? This can't be happening. I'm too young. I'm just in high school like a lot of you here. This isn't part of the plan. This isn't part of the path. But quickly, I had to learn that cancer knows no bounds. And I had to quickly get adjusted to my new reality. A reality that involved a 3-year treatment plan. That too, assuming everything went according to schedule. Now, if you're not too sure of what the life cycle looks like for someone as a cancer patient, while it can vary from person to person, type of cancer to type of cancer, there are a few key elements that remain fairly common. For me, the first one was isolation. It was like I was living COVID before we all did, where I couldn't really leave the house too much because all the treatment I'd been getting up until that point had been weakening my immune system to the point where even a simple cold or a low-grade fever would cause me to be rushed to the emergency room to get treated right away. Beyond that came all the medications you had to take. Now, it wasn't just your standard chemotherapy medications, but medications to help with all the side effects that chemotherapy caused. Lack of appetite, nausea, physical weakness, and then all these medications had their own sets of side effects. So there's a delicate balancing act between trying to make me feel as least miserable as possible, while also trying to minimize the tsunami of medications swirling around in my stomach. Beyond that came all the hospital visits. Instead of being in school full-time and hanging out at social events or even having a job, this was my full-time, was being at the hospital 3, 4, 5 days a week for 4 or 5 hours at a time for months and months and months, especially at the start of treatment, to make sure that I got the treatment through IV that I actually needed. And beyond that, as long as I got through all those parts, what was left for me the rest of the day was mostly being bedridden because of all the treatment throughout the day that just wears you down as a person. And this cycle repeats day in, day out for those first few months of treatment. And it was at this time where not only I experienced a lot of physical pain, losing all my hair within a month, losing almost 25 pounds, barely being able to recognize the body I was in anymore because it looked so different so quickly, but also a lot of the mental effects that came with it that required their own sets of treatment, admissions, to the point where I even needed to be in a wheelchair to get around and even needed to have a feeding tube to make sure I had the necessary calories within me to survive. And it was at this point where all I was surrounded with was pain, not only pain for myself, but from the other kids and their stories that I was seeing in the hospitals, where I'd contemplated if this was all worth it, if the journey was too hard to climb, if there actually would be a light at the end of the tunnel. And as I pondered over those thoughts, wondering if and when things would end, it came to me that I wouldn't have felt like I would have achieved my true potential. I felt like all this time I was following a path that was almost predetermined for me. I wasn't embracing what made me unique. I wasn't embracing the sort of impact that I wanted to have. And so from those moments came change in my life to start taking the journey towards showing my more authentic self. And what this started with was an Instagram blog page. Not only was this a way to inform friends, family members, relatives of how my treatment was going without having to share the same message with people 40, 50 plus different times, but it was a way to almost mind dump for me and get all that mental clutter out of my head and onto paper, or in this case, the internet. It was a way for me to show not only some of the happier moments at the hospital of Halloween events, Christmas celebrations, and things like that, but some of the deeper thoughts that I had while going through treatment. Showing what treatment as a cancer patient, especially as a teenager, is really like. And this was a way that allowed me to get further opportunities to share my story. As I got more positive feedback here, I ended up speaking for local news channels, for interviews, for fundraisers held by my hospital. I got connected with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, where I spoke for different events they had, and charity auctions, and even spoke to different schools. And it was a way for me to kind of turn this challenge, turn this obstacle of cancer that I was facing on its head. And so, It was from this experience that I learned the Stoic philosophy that it's an event plus our response that equals our outcome. There's very little in life that's truly 100% good or 100% bad. But it's how we decide to respond to these situations that decides how they turn out. Cancer helped me go from a situation of why me? Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? To one where I understood the opportunity, the responsibility, the duty I had to share, to connect with people who might be going through similar experience, to inform others who might not know about what these experiences are like. Cancer encouraged me to take risks, to care less about opinions of others, especially those I might not get advice from, and to especially carve my own trail in a world where people often follow the paved path. It taught me a lot of valuable lessons when it comes to facing challenges, lessons that are transferable amongst any challenge that we might be facing in life. And it taught me to not necessarily escape from these challenges or try and hide them or pretend like they don't exist, but really face them head on. And these are a few lessons that I want to share with you. I think it all begins with first finding your tribe. Similar to how COVID exposed to us who our true connections were by who stayed in touch with us when maybe we weren't physically close to each other all the time, cancer did the same for me. It was the people that stayed connected with me. It was the people that stayed interested and wanted to be there to support me, even though they knew that I couldn't really offer much in return, that I realized were part of my tribe. There's about 20 million people that are diagnosed with cancer each year, and it affects so much more than just the people diagnosed. It affects their families, their friends, their teammates, their coworkers. And so knowing who's in your tribe and wants the best for you helps build the internal strength within you to face these challenges for yourself. And you know you have people that you can lean on whenever you need to. Another key aspect is learning to be an adventurous driver. Now, someone who recently got my own driver's license, I'm definitely not recommending any dangerous, scary driving behavior, but what I am recommending is to, I guess metaphorically, not always feel the need to follow the rules of the road in life. Sometimes you need to make U-turns, drive on new roads, go a little bit past the speed limit, especially to achieve the ambitious goals that I'm sure everyone here has. Cancer was something that I definitely could have fought alone. It was something where I could have just tried to hide it from the rest of the world, the challenges that I was going through, and tried to keep it within my family or my close group of friends. But I saw this challenge as an opportunity, as a chance for impact. And while all these interviews and blogs behind the smile that I have might be pretty scary, I felt like the opportunity that came from this crisis made it all worth it. And I think a final aspect involves living like you have cancer. Now, I definitely don't recommend, again, any of the pain, any of the trauma, any of the suffering that comes with cancer upon anyone. What I do recommend is a mindset shift. When you're going through cancer, you're forced to reevaluate where you are in life. You're forced to understand what your priorities truly are and not what other people have essentially put on you as what your priorities should be. It helps you make sure that how you're acting is in line with these priorities. It also creates a mindset shift of being able to find joy in life's simplest beauties. Because they say you can act like nothing is a miracle, or you can act like everything is a miracle. And by acting in the latter, you're able to see the opportunity that comes from every challenge. At this point in my life, I'm actually grateful that I had my cancer diagnosis at such a young age. Because not only of everything that it's been able to teach me that I can learn from for the rest of my life, but what I'm able to share through my interviews, blogs, talks like these ones. And I think that none of these strategies, none of these techniques are actually possible without actually first going fully all in and betting on yourself. They say if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. The same thing happened with my cancer diagnosis. The less I thought I'd be able to recover, the less I had believed in myself, the less I leaned upon the people that were there to support me, the worse my condition got. But on the other hand, the more self-belief I developed, the more confidence I had in myself, the more I felt positive in my ability to overcome challenges like cancer. That's where I went from being in a wheelchair to walking again, running again, playing competitive sports again. We can often be our own worst critics, but self-belief puts us in the driver's seat. It eliminates any sense of failure we might have because we realize that there's a lot of effort needed to reach our goals, and stumbles are just a natural part of the process. And it makes us limitless because we do realize that we can do almost anything we set our minds to. Now, if you do take anything from my talk, I hope it's that you also learn that the biggest opportunity for growth and lessons come on the other side of our deepest, darkest obstacles. And while I am happy to have finished my treatment at the end of last year, what makes me more proud is all these lessons, all these skills, all these mindsets that I've developed and been able to share with people like you, and the truer version of myself that I've been able to express. And now, as I am pursuing my degree in my passion for engineering at the University of Waterloo, to put it in that sort of terminology, I learned that an obstacle is a feature, not a bug. So in your lives, I hope you're able to do what scares you to reach your goals, to create your own path to get there. Because although our plans may often differ from reality, the best part is that we do get to live in reality, because it makes the joy of our accomplishment after all these struggles, after all these pains, that much sweeter. And so, as we've learned that things can be taken just as suddenly as they're given, it doesn't truly matter how much time you might have left, 80 years, 8 years, or even 8 months. What really matters is how we choose to spend it. Thank you.